hard to capture, extravagant, resurrect the track and it's militant. And I react like a convict and start killing. It's manifesting. The gods work like appliances, dealing in my psyche.
Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, and today we're going to be having another discussion for Boruto Naruto Next Generations, the manga, and for anime only fans. This is the time of the month where a lot of the content on the channel is going to be spoiler heavy, so I thank you for your support. But if you're still here, I'm assuming that you're okay with me talking about any type of Boruto manga spoilers. So jumping right into it, I want to talk to you guys about something that I feel like is increasingly becoming more and more obvious, which is the fact that Boruto and Sarada, in a very eerily similar way, they are mirroring their parents, and in particular they're mirroring their fathers. And just as Naruto and Sasuke were both given the sun and moon seals, and both of them were given extraordinary power-ups, I think that because Boruto and Sarada are the first children who are born from the reincarnates of Ashura and Inja after this cycle of hatred has been broken, and because both of their parents have been given those sun and moon seals, I think that you could see a potential power up, especially given the fact that Naruto's new transformation right now is drawing on comparisons of being compared to the sun, and Naruto's given that sun seal. So I think that they're laying potential groundwork here, and I'll explain why. Now that Naruto has this new transformation, and his transformation has been compared to the sun, and I've done a video talking about the symbolism behind Naruto's transformation, the colors that it has, and how it all ties back into Hagoromo Otsutsuki giving Naruto the sun seal. And I did another video talking about the fact that Sasuke, because Sasuke had the moon seal, that could lead to Sasuke getting some other type of power up as well, if that's a route that they go. However, I want to take things a step further, and I want to talk to you guys about the foreshadowing and the possible evidence that you have that Boruto and Sarada are in for something very similar. Obviously, this would be an in-game type of thing. This would not be something that you see right away, right up front. So in order to make that point, you have to look at a couple of things that have been introduced. So we know a few years back that Masashi Kishimoto drew designs of Boruto with the Kyuubi chakra mode, and we saw how Mitsuki had a sage mode, and we saw that Sarada had a Mangekyo Sharingan in there. And like I've talked about in the past, you saw Sarada with a sun type of a Mangekyo Sharingan, and it would be typical Masashi Kishimoto style of writing to be something to where you have Sarada and Boruto walk the same path as their parents, in that just as Sasuke is the moon to Naruto's sun, and just as the moon can't give off its own light, but instead it reflects the light that the actual sun gives off, Sarada and Boruto's powers are not going to be able to be unleashed at their full power unless they're working in unison together. We've seen this theme several times in the Naruto manga. You can go back to the whole conversation that Obito had when Obito was talking about the fact that he and Kakashi would not be able to bring out their Mangekyo Sharingan and their Sharingan's full powers unless they were working together. The same thing when it came to Obito warning Sakura that Madara's Rinnegan was going to be extremely overpowered if Madara got both halves. And when you look at Naruto and Sasuke, when they fought against Kaguya, they needed to work together to use both halves of the sage's power. And so when you start looking at both of these kids now, there is some room to argue that Boruto's Jogan and Sarada with her Mangekyo Sharingan, whatever those powers are, they're going to be interlinked, and they're going to be something to where they have to work in unison, especially when you have a character like Isshiki who's so overpowered. And just to be clear, I know that Isshiki dies in this latest chapter. However, I don't think that this is the end for him. By now, you guys should have already seen the video talking about how Kawaki still has Isshiki's karma seal. So I think that you either have Isshiki or you potentially have somebody higher up than Isshiki. That does not negate the need for a future power up though. Sarada has taken the same path as Naruto. Naruto has the sun seal. The Mangekyo Sharingan pattern that we saw Sarada had the symbolism of the sun. When you look at Boruto, Boruto has the Jogan. The Jogan was given to him by who? Taneri, somebody who's also on the moon. Boruto wants to be like Sasuke. Sasuke was the person who was given the moon seal. And the reason why that's so interesting is that when you look at it, it's a huge contrast to Boruto's Jogan. The sun and the moon are often portrayed in Japanese folklore and mythology and all that as being the yin and the yang, which goes back to the whole fact that one is not complete without the other. One cannot fully exist without the other when you start looking at being in perfect sync and perfect harmony. It's often been said with the character of Naruto and Sasuke that if one dies, the other one's not going to exist without the other. We know that that's because of the whole thing with the reincarnates, but given the fact that Boruto and Sarada are these first offspring by the reincarnates that have broken that whole cycle of hatred, one thing that I think that we could consider is if you look at Kishimoto's past words where he said that he's okay with killing off Naruto, he's okay with killing off Sasuke, anybody from that older generation, let's assume that that is something that does indeed actually happen. So if they do go that route, one way that you continue on with those themes and the legacies of those characters is the fact that Boruto and Sarada are both responding to that cycle of hatred and that pain of loss, much in the same way that Naruto did, where for a brief period in time they flirt with being consumed by that actual anger, but because they're both children of the reincarnates that broke that cycle of hatred, and just like how their parents weren't going to be able to exist without one another, the power that they get from pushing through that pain of loss, that power up they get is going to depend on one another, much in the same way that Naruto and Sasuke's Sun and Moon seals, in order to defeat Kaguya, depended on one another as well. I think again it goes back to the whole yin and yang and the whole thing of one can't exist without the other. I think that if you link their powers together, that is something that could work, and again it's a very Kishimoto-esque thing to do. When you really look at something like this, there's a lot of symbolism in that, and if you really want to book in this third part of the Naruto series, being that Boruto is the third portion of the series in terms of anime format, if you want to really book in everything in a very nice and complete manner, having those children effectively work together in a way that surpasses their parents and continuing their parents' legacy onward in order to fully close the door on this Otsutsuki threat, whether or not you believe that Isshiki is going to be a final villain or whether or not you think that there's going to be somebody even higher than that, given how overpowered Isshiki is, whatever threat that exists in the shadows that is above him, more than likely is going to be something to where Naruto and Sasuke, they're not going to be able to eclipse that. And if you're going to sell people on the fact that Naruto and Sasuke's children are going to be able to take on this threat because Naruto has this theme that the next generation is going to surpass the one before it, and you have all this lines and dialogue about how Naruto says that this next generation, even though it's growing up in a time of peace, it hasn't fully blossomed yet. I think that if you pay off that line there and you make it where Naruto and Sasuke are the nourishment that causes Boruto and Sarada's powers to awaken, develop, and blossom, I think you could book in the Naruto franchise in a way that isn't disrespectful to everything that has come before that. However, if you do something like that, it's going to be a very fine line. You're going to have to be very careful when you do so. However, I want to know from you guys, how do you guys feel about that? What do you think about this possibility that Boruto and Sarada, because they are the first children from the reincarnates of Asha and Indra after breaking the cycle of hatred, do you guys think this is something that Kishimoto would play around with to justify Isshiki eventually being brought down, if indeed Isshiki is the final villain? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching on to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.